Hi, neighbors. I'm so glad you're here. Today, Judith and I chat about some of the simple joys in our lives. Do you ever find yourself mindlessly rushing from one activity or task to another? One thing you may not know about me is that my brain loves lists. I make a new list of priorities for myself every day. But that's not all. There are other lists I make too, and it's often how I organize my thoughts. If you're in my tribe of list lovers, drop me a comment and let me know I'm not alone. So I've noticed a side effect of being a list person though, and I really have to be mindful about it. First, I'm pretty sure using lists as a tool isn't bad. So if it's your jam like it is mine, let's just keep doing that. But I'd like to invite you to observe yourself a little more when you find yourself in list making or executing mode. What I found is I can get so focused on the executing of my list that my experience of life shifts to more of a passing through vibe versus a deeply experiencing the very life I'm trying to organize. I might be physically present, but my head might already be 10 blocks in the future. Does that sound familiar to you? That is when I turn to remembering my simple joys. They are like my anchors. The shift from passing through a moment to savoring a moment is what we're talking about here. And it's not just a nice sentiment, it's backed by science. For example, Dr. Rick Hansen, a psychologist and senior fellow at UC Berkeley, has done interesting work to explain how our brains are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. I think that's a powerful visual. If we aren't sometimes intentional about pointing our attention toward acknowledging things that are going well for us or things we see in our environment that make our life experiences better, we can end up feeling like we're losing even when we really aren't. Dr. Fred Bryant, a professor at Loyola University, and his co-author Joseph Veroff actually wrote a book about savoring specifically. It's called Savoring, and it's all about our ability to give our attention to the joys, pleasures, and other positive feelings that we experience in our lives. And for me, the key phrase there is give our attention. In our world where distraction seems to kind of be the norm, it's easy to forget that you can choose what you give attention to. Simple joys is a great conversation topic to share with others. So don't forget to grab the free conversation guide that goes with this episode on our website at frontporchretreats.com. Use the conversation guide to initiate and experience more and deeper conversations in your own life. See our show notes for links and more information. Now let's get to that conversation with Judith. So Judith, it seems like we're always kind of waiting for the big stuff to happen before we let ourselves feel like we're really winning at life. But I've noticed that when I'm in a mode of anticipating and waiting for those big win moments and my head is in the future, I tend to overlook all of the small, beautiful things happening right in front of me, like the warmth of this cup of tea or that feeling of triumph, like the universe really has my back when I finally catch a green light when I'm running late. I'm curious, what's hitting that spot for you lately? What are some of the simple joys you currently really try to notice and appreciate in your life?
Well, one of the things that I find so delightful is I get up pretty early in the morning, and the first thing I look out is I turn on my light and I watch the sun rise over the mountain. For me, that is a beautiful sign that the day is beginning. So I love the mountaintops, and I find it almost amusing that sometimes you can't tell where the mountains, especially if they have a little snow on them, where they stop and the clouds begin because it looks like just an extension of the mountains. So I find it very peaceful. I find it very rewarding, and it's a simple joy because it takes nothing to make it happen except to look out the window. That's a blessing that I have. Another one is I'll get a text from a grand just to say hi.
From a grandchild?
Yes. It's one of those things where you go, wow, even though we can't be together, it's an opportunity to say, I'm thinking about you. I try to do the same. And because I think those connections are simple joys, but they can make such a difference. And then recently, I've done a whole lot more connecting with people from my past. And it's funny how that works because I find that it's like it was yesterday.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Like nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed except for we've gotten a lot older. And that's kind of a neat thing too. Having people that you had different experiences with, totally different locations. I mean, these are thousands of miles apart, but you have that connection. Mm-hmm. That's a joy.
Yeah.
That's a true joy. What about you?
Well, before I answer that question for myself, I just want to mirror something back that I heard from you, and kind of thematically, it seems like your joys fall into two or the joys that you were talking about fall into two categories. And that would be, connections with people, and your connection, your own personal connection and appreciation of the environment outside, the world around you, just the beauty that you see in the world. So I think that's pretty pointed, a pointed observation of what you place priority on from a joy standpoint. Mm-hmm. What brings you the most joy?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would have a conversation with someone and enjoy it so much more just because it is a opportunity to understand their perspective. And I personally love to do that either with a cup of tea or a opportunity on the front porch, but I'm not interested in going into restaurants for it. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason why is because that takes away. It's too many distractions.
I hear you. Yeah. Lots of stimulation.
Yeah. Too many distractions, and I can't concentrate on what's really important, which is either the other person or the view I've got. And my view, of course, is very important to me because I feel very connected to it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've felt for a long time.
Yeah.
My makeup.
Yep, that makes sense.
And you?
So while you focused a lot on, the connections with others and the beauty in your environment, which I also find joy in, a really strong connection with someone, especially when it's intellectually, for me personally, the connections that I find joy in are usually, they have a level of intellectual stimulation. They have a level of appreciation and respect associated with them. I don't find a lot of pure joy in, connections that are transactional in nature. So I think that's where, we've kind of talked before about like transforming connections from transactional, which is a lot of our lives today, to at least some degree of depth, or acknowledgement that I truly see you as the human. So I guess I would say I feel that too, that's a joy, but it's mostly a joy when there is a degree of depth to it, mm-hmm. that I don't find it a lot in my day. And that's something that I'd love to find more in my day. That's one of my personal things that, in my future years, I want greater depth in my connections. And that's something I can work towards. But if I were to answer that question from the ground up, while I have a strong appreciation, I find great joy in things like just taking a walk. Mm-hmm. I love all of my plants in my house. I find joy in watching. Judith gave me a bit of her Christmas cactus, and it has flourished at my house in different pots. And it's not Christmas when we're having this conversation, but one of my cactuses bloomed the other day. I took a picture of it. It was so exciting. But that little flower, only one of them, there's one flower. And I just found that it's like a little miracle that just happens, so I praised my plants. But I find joy in the small things that I find beautiful. I find joy, especially in my quiet moments, because that's something I need. One of my favorite things is to wake up in the morning and brew a bitter cup of hot coffee and sit by myself, which I think my dad does. So I, like father, like daughter. But I really enjoy those moments, haven't always been available to me. And in this moment, they're available more consistently. And I find great joy in knowing that I get to have those moments. Yeah. I don't take them for granted.
That's a good thing. I also wonder, though, about the opportunities for learning. Because I find that to also be a joyful thing for me. Whether I'm learning from grandchildren who are studying something and they share it, or if I do an event at the library and it's a world discussion, or if I'm following something. And, as much as I prefer not to be with computers and stuff like that, because I prefer to have a cleaner environment than that with books, because I like books.
Yep.
But the value of the technology is it can allow for greater learning opportunities too. So again, it's a joy to have that option.
I'm curious. You just said it's a joy to have that option. When I wonder if there's, and I don't know the answer to this, so listeners, I'm not being an expert here, but I'm wondering something. We talk about when you're getting into a new topic and you're deep in learning mode, sometimes going down rabbit holes, and it's like, oh, this topic all of a sudden really interests me and we want to go really deep on it. You find yourself, before you know it, it's been hours. And is that in those moments, I've heard often the term flow. You are in a place of flow. Do you specifically think of that as being in a place of joy, or is the joy the fact that you have that opportunity to learn?
I think the joy for me is the opportunity to learn, and the flow is, it's kind of like if you're on a boat and you're flowing down the river. That's what I feel like whenever I get to my destination, and that destination may mean I've learned everything I want to learn, or that was a rabbit hole, but the actual trip was great.
Yep.
So it was still joyful throughout the time, but usually it's not a simple because it does take you down.
Yep.
But it's such a good learning that I value it, and it's something that if you share it with someone, and especially if you end up with it being at the end and you find it not to be worthwhile, you can keep them from taking that same little trip. But again, maybe they found a different.
It's true. Experiences are very different.
It can be.
And things that we feel are very joyful. I think of, this warm cup of tea. Some people don't even like tea. Did you know that?
Yep.
While I do not understand said people who do not like tea, I respect that maybe, they don't enjoy the practice of sitting down and having a hot cup of tea in your hands and exploring something with someone else, or just reflecting.
Well, it could be too that, there are people that it's painful for them to slow down. And I understand that too. Because I tend to hit the road running. I get up when I get up in the morning, I am ready and I want to make things happen. So that's the reason why when we talk about my first thing, which is I do love looking out and seeing my mountains, recognize I'm there not that long.
But it sets the tone.
It does set the tone. And I acknowledge it and I praise it, because it is a gift to be able to see. First of all, is a gift. To be able to have the beauty to see is a gift. And I appreciate those gifts. Material things don't do a whole lot for me. In fact, what they do instead is cause me to need to declutter.
Yes.
Whenever you go and listen to our minimalist thing, we have a hard time with that too. Decluttering, that is. The joy is if you get it done. It's wonderful. Those are the things that I look at and can really appreciate the variance throughout the day, the opportunities throughout the day.
Well, before we turn to our quotes, you reminded me of something else, another thing to be grateful for and find, not just gratitude in, but joy in thinking about. And that is our parents and our ancestors. And I was reading a book the other day that, and I wish I could remember it. I'll try to remember it and put the link to it. I thought it was a meaningful book in the show notes. But the point that it was referring to a Japanese practice of having altars in their homes, where traditionally pretty much every Japanese household included an altar. And there were practices at least twice a day where they would go and, pray to the ancestors. And, the book, discussed how that practice, as the newer generations moved away from home, moved to the cities, they dispersed, they didn't feel like they had brought their ancestors with them, and they didn't have altars in their small dwellings in the city. Altars don't have to be massive or anything, and that was the point that they were trying to make. But I thought it was a really interesting dialogue that the author was trying to have related to the joy of recognizing the lineage that you have and all that your ancestors have done for you to be in this moment, from bringing you to life. That's the easiest thing to say, but also what they've passed on to you in terms of values and traditions and things that maybe we really take for granted that we do find joy in, and I think about, something very simple. We celebrate Easter, Easter baskets. Did you have an Easter basket when you were a youth?
Not that I remember.
But that was something that's a tradition for our family, and we've done it with our grandchildren. I no longer get an Easter basket, but the grandchildren do. I've made them for my children, and it's held meaning in our family. To have that fun Easter thing that you get to look forward to every year, and it brings something different. Easter is not about Easter baskets, but but it's still a tradition that has held meaning for participants in that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but, I was thinking about, I do find joy in whether or not we continue those practices, whether or not we continue traditions. I find joy in thinking about, how I've come to be who I am today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to me. If you look at it over the times and why you start traditions, there are traditions you start and there's traditions you stop.
Yep.
And consciously deciding that, I think, is based on whether they bring joy or not.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've got so much that is secular. Some
Easter baskets.
Yeah. That you choose whether or not you want to engage in that.
Yep.
And if it brings no joy, or when the joy is limited, then it's time to move to a different process.
And we've had very candid conversations as we analyze our own family dynamics that have changed over the years. We carry some traditions, but we've had some pretty candid conversations about, well, how do we want this day to be? How do we want this experience to be? And I think, that's really based around, does this bring joy to our family? And, some things do. And some things we've said, we're going to stop doing this because, it doesn't, it's become maybe a perceived burden, or it's, it takes more time than people have to give, which that's just life. Lives change, families change. Yep. Geography changes.
Yep. So lots of things change, and being able to move with the times without fracturing the family is the key.
Yes.
But again, if you don't recognize the joys, it's easy to eliminate things that are joy. Versus identifying what is truly joyful and what is mundane.
I really like that. All right, well, let's move into our quote section.
Okay.
In each podcast episode, Judith and I each choose a quote to share, and we talk about why it resonated with us. Today, I'll go first. My quote is attributed to Henri Nouwen, and he says, "Joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day." And, this resonates for me, Judith, because I think about that flower that bloomed just this week. And, it was the kind of week that it would have been pretty easy to ignore it and not take I've now stopped and admired it 2 or 3 times. And I'm hoping I can do that a few more times before it drops. But it's the kind of thing that, it does bring me joy to see that beautiful flower. It's this incredible light pink shade. It's truly a gorgeous bloom in just one. And it almost makes it more joyful because it's such a treat to get this bloom at this time of year. But my point is that it would be so easy to ignore it. It would be so easy to pass by it, to, think that I don't have time to be joyful about this. I just don't have time because this week has had its challenges and its schedules. And I had to really choose to stop and say, it is worth my time to spend with this plant and enjoy this flower that doesn't come around all that often. That's my example for right now. Again, my quote was attributed to Henri Nouwen, and he says, "Joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day." Judith, what's your quote today?
Mine is by Alice Morse Earl. And her statement is, "Every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day. Focus on the good." I look at that so clearly. That is something that if we were to all focus on the good every day, highlight the good every day, then that which is not good would probably be eliminated just because there wouldn't be time in the day for it. Seriously, though, I believe that being able to see the good in a situation, being able to see the good in a person is a matter of choice.
Is it a skill, Judith?
I think it's a skill. I think it's a skill, though, that can be learned. I think it just needs practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you like, it's like your statement about the flower, the joy in the flower. You could have overlooked that flower, but instead you strengthened your appreciation for it by stopping several times throughout the week to give appreciation for it. If you think about that, the same thing could be said about a child, about another person, about a person that you work with, and finding something really positive that they have either done or that they've said or just that they are, and emphasizing that. I think that's where her focus is in this statement, and I believe firmly that it's truly a personal choice. I think to say it's been a crummy week, well, that's personal choice.
Mm-hmm.
To say it's been a wonderful week, that's personal choice too. But the difference in how you feel is incredible. If you say that it's a wonderful week because you have found some things like that flower to appreciate, or that child who you recognize as someone that's not perfect but is a pleasure, those kinds of things determine how we feel and what we believe. And I think the more energy you get with those feelings associated with it being the good.
So you're saying we generate energy by thinking those good feelings.
I do.
Energy creating feelings, and joy is an energy creating experience.
Exactly. And the more of it we can get, if you think of you live in a community where everyone that you encounter, as you walk, you encounter someone that has something joyful to say. Can you imagine what that would be like?
It would be so much fun.
Oh, no kidding. And they might point out something that they saw. Don't forget, when you get around to the park, make sure and look for this. It's beautiful. Something that says, I see you, and it's important I share this wonderful thing with you.
That would be truly joyful. What a joyful experience. Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought. I sincerely hope you found this podcast to be a simple joy. I know it can feel uncomfortable to stop and notice details and name some simple joys when you're used to running at 100 miles an hour all the time. Some days might feel like you have a million things on your plate or on your mind and no room for more. I've been there. Sometimes I still go there. I'm reminded of a quote attributed to Robert Brault. He said, "Enjoy the little things. For one day, you may look back and realize they were the big things. Give yourself the gift of moments to notice your simple joys. Whether it's the warmth of a mug with your favorite hot beverage, the breeze when you step outside for a walk, the delicious smell of your favorite meal, or the adorable laugh of a loved one, I invite you to notice it and name it." If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe to the Front Porch Retreats channel on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or your other favorite podcast apps. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Front Porch Retreats. The conversation doesn't have to stop here. You can find the full conversation guide for this episode on our website at frontporchretreats.com. Use the conversation guide to initiate and experience more and deeper conversations in your own life. See our show notes for links and more information. See you soon. Bye, neighbors.